Hello and welcome to SCLO Live. Thank you very much for joining us on YouTube today. My name is Martin Crowson. I'm joined today by the MD of SCLO, Steve O'Hare. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Martin.
The call for a snap January election in the UK has meant that many activities in the tendering sector has slowed down, but there are still some going. There could be some opportunities for your business or organisation. So we thought we'd just hop on for 10 or 15 minutes to discuss what those might be, and for Steve just to give you some ideas, hints and tips about the way you can make the best of this spell running up to the election on July the 5th. Once again, welcome. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, please do so. Steve, let's crack on and let's start. Now the election's been called, does this spell running up to the election usually lasts 5 or 6 weeks? A pre-election period used to be known as Purdah by lots of people. Just exactly what does that mean and how long does that period last for?
Okay, so firstly, thank you very much for setting this all up today, Martin. It's really good of you. Secondly, what the pre-election period legislation does is tries to prevent any sort of influence of an election. So it keeps the purpose behind it is to keep the election as free and as open as possible, and without any sort of concerns around influence that could be given by awarding of contracts or letting contracts or any of those different things. So having been around for more than 1 or 2 years, everyone did used to know it as Purdah. Purdah is actually a Hindustani word that means segregation. So actually it kind of made sense to use that word in terms of segregation of activity, segregation of the election away from everything else is where it came from. However, the word actually comes from segregating women from men, hence why in 2024 we don't use it anymore, because actually it's not really appropriate to continue to do so. So free history lesson within that piece as well. So it basically it's a period, as you said in your introduction, it's from more or less from the time that the election's called to the date of the election. So it officially started on the 30th of May, the pre-election period this time. So there was a little bit of a week or so hiatus from the election being called to actually the period starting.
Sure. Okay. And specifically in terms of tendering, what does it mean for that?
Okay. So what we need to in terms of the legislation, the regulations, it's very much a case of if there's a concern that could influence people's decisions or be an influencing factor. So what we tend to find is that the whole sort of tendering market, particularly for central governmental contracts, slows down. And there are a number of reasons for that. So firstly, bear in mind that we don't actually have a function, technically don't have a government at the minute, because actually we're in an electoral period. So anything that requires ministerial sign-off or anything that's sort of that upper echelon isn't going to happen. So if nothing was signed before the 30th of March, then the likelihood is, the reality is it's not going to go any further. So it becomes a sort of like a line in the sand. If it's not signed off, they can't go out to market. However, what it doesn't affect is everything. So certain things it will affect, certain things it won't, and it's sometimes it's very difficult to predict exactly what and exactly for how long, because ultimately it can depend on a number of factors. But normally this time of year this time in an electoral cycle, there's always a slowdown of period. So if things have been signed off, if the people that are running the procurement exercise view that they're comfortable that it's not going to influence anything or have any sort of effect on people's perceptions of any sort of any current government or incoming governmental group. And these regulations are effect in local elections, mayoral, combined mayoral elections, all of those sorts of things. So this year we've had a real sort of stop-start period from April time through to July with the various different elections we've had. So with this whole period, if you look at some of the mayoral combined authorities, there was activity started and they all of a sudden ground to a halt because they were somewhat concerned about this pre-election legislation. So it can be a little bit sort of a grey area within there. So some things get affected, other things don't. So things that, as I said, things that have been signed off don't tend to get affected. So if you've got that piece, then absolutely that'll continue as normal. And actually, I think in the one of the combined authority areas in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, they're due to well, they've just launched a skills bootcamp tender last week, and actually they're launching an adult education budget tender in the next couple of days. So because that's monies that's already been signed off centrally, monies that's already been transferred to them. They've already gone through their electoral period through the local election, so actually they're good to go. So actually it doesn't really affect anything, but other things it will have a negative effect on, or a slow down effect.
Sure. And you touched on skills boot camps there. That's obviously one of the things that can continue during this period.
Yep.
Are there any other areas that are of similar ilk that business can keep business as usual, as it were, during this spell?
Yeah, absolutely. So you generally find that unless it's for a governmental department, things like apprenticeship programs continue, because actually if it's for a central government function, then these things will continue. So this is the apprenticeship levy is government funding, but isn't government funding, if that makes sense, because ultimately it's a levy on an employer, and employer is paying into a pot. They have a pot of money. They can then spend that money on what they want to spend it on, or the apprenticeships that they want to spend it on. So therefore that doesn't get affected. So things like that will continue and have continued throughout this period. And the key thing to remember is this is it's only a governmental body this affects. It doesn't affect the private sector. So the private sector can always continue with any activity it was going to be doing. But that said, speaking to friends and colleagues in who work in different arenas, everyone's noticed a little bit of a slowdown on certain things while people wait for decisions to be made, because it just there's a continual knock-on of activity at all times.
Is it a particularly busy time for the skills boot camps as well?
It has been. I don't think it's good. It's not something that there's going to be lots of. It's stuff that is continuing. So as I said, there's the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough opportunity. There will be others that will come out, because again, that's money that's already been signed off. It's money that has already gone. So when the budget holder is ready to procure, they can go out to market. But
SCLO have had plenty of experience in these sort of spells. How specifically can you help businesses and organisations during this period?
Okay, well, ultimately, if you've got an immediate piece of activity that needs completing, and it's out and it's ready to be procured, then ultimately please contact us. We're here. I've not gone off on holiday just yet. I'll wait till July until the schools are finished before doing that. But SCLO are here to support with anything, and there is activity going on at the moment. But in terms of other things and that businesses can do, particularly around their sort of tendering functions, is actually a really good time to take stock. So there's things that we can do. So actually there is a little bit of a hiatus. Probably not as busy as we would normally be in June. June tends to be get everything out before the summer holiday type period. So I think this year is going to have a look at the workflow is going to look decidedly different to how it normally would do within sort of like normal monthly cycles. So in that taking stock period, there's lots of things that we mean to do that we don't ever get around to doing. So there are a raft and range of frameworks and dynamic purchasing systems that will benefit businesses that will allow them to then go for different activities. So if we look at so we mentioned skills bootcamp. So the Department for Education, government department, very little they can do in terms of procurement at the moment, because they'll need ministerial sign-off. But what they can do is they can, and just before the pre-election period, promoted boot camps and encouraged those interested in delivering boot camps to get onto their dynamic purchasing system. So once they have a new minister in place to oversee and sign off on stuff, then they can actually look at going to market ultimately. that's some things that, if you're interested in boot camps, would be definitely worth having a look at in this slightly quieter period. As I said, there's a plethora of apprenticeship frameworks, apprenticeship dynamic purchasing systems that are used by local authorities, governmental bodies, that would be this is an ideal opportunity to get onto those with what will likely be a glut of activity come back end of July, August, September time, once the wheels start turning back to their normal speed, because ultimately there's still budgets to be spent and contracts to be let. There just is a bit of a hiatus of a sort of 6 to 8 week period while things are being sorted out. But that 6 to 8 week period, things still that were meant to happen still need to happen at some point.
In short, you use the time wisely.
Absolutely. So again, other things that you could, the SCLO could help you with. It's a good time to review your central library of information, your boilerplate answers. We've talked before about the real importance of analysing feedback and reviewing feedback. Now is a great time to actually perhaps look at pieces that work that you may have tendered for and you perhaps didn't get where you wanted to get to. Now would be a great time to do that review activity, and actually, with that fresh set of eyes, and not the pressure of having to have something in tomorrow, to actually review what you've done before. Is there certain things you could do better? Is there a fresh pair of eyes that could look at something and say, well, actually we could, do we need to, what can we change here? What do we need to change here? So actually we're in a really, really strong position come
Excuse me.
Oh, is it frog in your throat there? That's all right.
I think it's gone.
Excellent.
I was going to say, how soon after this is all finished do things begin to pick up again? Are we literally talking about the day after the results are announced, or do we realistically have to give? Let's assume there's a new government in place, as the polls may suggest. How quickly do you expect things to pick up again on the things that have slowed down?
And this is traditionally. So traditionally, it's normally about 2-3 weeks, and then things are fairly back to normal. So what we've got to bear in mind is that departments that have been functioning, it's just things that would have been signed off in that 6 to 8 week period won't be signed off until there's a new government in place. So you normally have that sort of 2-3 week lag within there. So realistically, you're looking at the end of July, start of August for things to go back to normal. And when we would normally be thinking of a sort of quieter period over the summer in some instances, the likelihood is probably like to be a little bit busier over the summer than, or particularly the August-September period than you would normally expect. Normally you have when government departments shut down sort of middle of July, it's to the middle of August, it's really quite quiet, and then all of a sudden you get a big spike towards the end of August, and September, October becomes busy. So it's just, I suspect that spike might be a little bit earlier this year, just with the timings of a July election. I don't know when we normally vote. I mean, I think the previous big general election was December time, I think. So it was, which was slightly.
Yeah, and I've got May and October in my head as previous ones as well. So
July seems an unusual time, but I guess it's what Mr. Sunak decided he wanted to do.
Yeah, and there's no reason why any new government should want to delay the machinations of government ticking over quickly, is there?
No, absolutely not. No, and even if you look at there's the usual. There's some interesting pledges in some of the manifestos, but the majority of stuff really does look a little bit more like business as usual. There's not fundamental changes. I don't think there'll be a wide scale scrapping of activity. Some of the promises and aren't necessarily going to come online in 2025. Actually, if you look at, say, for example, the very contentious national service piece that the Conservatives announced, that's not till 2028. So actually, that's 3 years away. So there is a long period between the actual election day results and actual things that sit in manifestos happening.
Yeah. Okay. And you don't expect much change, even if there's a big change in government?
Not in the first instance. It's interesting. I was with a meeting with a client earlier today, and yeah, we were just looking at the varying different things and how that would actually affect that organisation. And you kind of look at the next 18 months, 2 years. It's probably likely to be very, very similar to what it has been. There is lots of stuff coming to an end in 25. But that both parties have pledged to keep the stuff that's coming to an end. So it kind of means that back end of 24 becomes busy to get things in place for 25.
Okay, all right. We shall see. Not long
Indeed.
to go now.
Yeah,
Steve, thank you very much.
My ballot papers came through the post today, so I can now go do my post vote later.
It's very real. Steve, thanks as ever for your time today. Much appreciated.
All right, and thank you again, Martin.
If you'd like to find out any more about SCLO, please visit the website. As I said before, if you've not already subscribed to the SCLO YouTube channel, please do so, and you'll be the first to find out about any upcoming videos we've got. And if you'd like to contact Steve directly to find out any more information about some of the topics we've been discussing and other topics around the sector, Steve's email address is currently at the bottom of the screen as well. That just leaves me, Martin Crowson, the chance to say thank you very much for joining us here on YouTube today. We appreciate your attendance and all the best, and we'll see you here on SCLO Live again very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.